detect. But do you know the best part of the Sky Striker? This lethal drone is made in India by a weapons firm based in Bengaluru. This is Indian innovation at its finest, homegrown, precise and deadly. The weapons we just told you about were a sample of the types of ammunition used. These were the tip of the sword. In the background was a silent force, electronic warfare units, Indian systems that jammed enemy radars, blinded Pakistan's tracking stations and disrupted communication grids. The entire operation was a well-coordinated effort. The Indian Armed Forces worked together to achieve their objectives. But let's be clear, Operation Sindoor was not about weapons, it was about intent. India targeted terrorist camps, not civilian areas, not Pakistani military installations. The mission was over in 25 minutes flat. The kind of weapons used were meant for targeted destruction. This was not an act of war. This was a mission to build deterrence with precision. It was retaliation with restraint. And it was a declaration that India's red lines are real. India's strikes were tactical, but their impact is strategic, and the ripple effects are now being felt far beyond the line of control. Tensions on the border are spilling over to the markets, and the impact is visible. Today, the Sensex fell over 412 points. This is a drop of 0.5%. The Sensex is an index of India's top 30 stocks. The Nifty also ended lower, down nearly 141 points. The Nifty tracks India's top 50 companies. Both these indices opened strong, but they lost steam as the day wore on. By afternoon, there was a fair bit of volatility. Banking, auto and FMCG stocks, that is fast-moving consumer goods, FMCG, all of these stocks came under pressure. Clearly, the investors were pulling back. The market turned defensive, and the reason was quite clear. The conflict with Pakistan was escalating. But here's an interesting trend, not surprising though, interesting nonetheless. While the
Moscow. Ukraine says it has detained 2 alleged Hungarian spies it accused of gathering intelligence, including the location of air defense systems in the western Zakarpattia region bordering Hungary. Zambia's health ministry says it was taking action against the theft of donated medicines after the United States announced a major aid cut over the government's failure to tackle the racket. And Leo XIV celebrates his first Mass as Pope the day after becoming the first US head of the Catholic Church, with the world's eyes watching for signs of what kind of leader he will be. Hello and welcome. In Firstpost Spotlight, we begin with the latest from India. The nation of over 1.4 billion people woke up this morning after a tense night of cross-border tensions. The country's powerful air defense systems knocked down Pakistani missiles and drones in several border districts of Jammu and Kashmir, Punjab, Rajasthan and Gujarat. The debris from the destroyed Pakistani missiles destroyed in the air was recovered earlier this morning from Jammu and Kashmir's Rajouri and from Punjab's Hoshiarpur. Meanwhile, India's Border Security Force foiled a major infiltration bid in Jammu and Kashmir's Samba district. The Indian forces eliminated at least 7 terrorists of Jaish-e-Mohammad terror group and caused extensive damage to the Pakistani post opposite Samba. As India continued cracking down on Pakistan-backed terrorism along the line of control, Islamabad's forces resorted to violating the ceasefire again, prompting a sharp retaliation from the Indian side. Several houses in Uri and Kupwara were extensively damaged in the Pakistani shelling. In Poonch, a Gurdwara also suffered damage as Pakistan fired mortars and heavy caliber artillery. Early this morning, air attack sirens briefly rang out in Chandigarh, Patiala, Ambala and Panchkula cities in northern India. The Indian Air Force warned of a possible airborne threat, urging civilians to stay indoors and away from balconies. In the capital Delhi and the surrounding National Capital Region, air attack sirens were tested and civil defense mechanisms were inspected in preparation of a potential attack. Armed with some of the world's most advanced air defense systems, Indian forces have been swift and surgical, neutralizing threats, shooting down drones and warning civilians in real time. Back in New Delhi, a flurry of high-stakes meetings signaled India's readiness for any escalation. Defence Minister Rajnath Singh chaired a high-level meeting with the Chief of Defence Staff as well as the Chiefs of Army, Air Force and the Indian Navy. Singh reviewed the security situation along the western border and the operational preparedness of the Indian Armed Forces. For the second day in a row, Home Minister Amit Shah chaired a security review meeting with the chief ministers and officials of border states. The Home Minister was briefed on the steps taken by the state governments for the safety and security of citizens, especially in the sensitive districts. From missile strikes to infiltration bids, every threat from Pakistan has been met with firepower, focus and a firm resolve. The message is clear. Provoke India and you will be answered. Sirens, blackout, explosions. Jammu turned into a war zone late on Thursday night as India faced a coordinated drone and missile strike by Pakistan, which the armed forces valiantly fought and foiled. What the two nuclear-armed arch-rivals are engaged in is the biggest escalation in over 2 decades. Let's take a look at what unfolded last night.
Red light.
Missiles launched by Pakistan whizzed past. Red flashes cut through the night sky in India, lighting it up. Reports say all of that continued for over 2 hours. The Ministry of Defence confirmed it was a Pakistani strike. Targets included military stations in Jammu, Pathankot and Udhampur. Drones and missiles were deployed from across the border, but India's defence system moved in fast. India's Ministry of External Affairs confirmed Pakistan sent over 300 to 400 drones, all of which were neutralised. Yes, over 300 to 400 drones. Across parts of the Indian western border that Pakistan targeted, the map on your screen shows the exact attack sites. It was a large-scale counter-drone operation. In the wake of all of these developments, India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar reached out to US Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Jaishankar conveyed that India will firmly respond to any escalation by Pakistan. The Indian External Affairs Minister also dialed the EU's Foreign Policy Chief, Kaja Kallas. The line of control, or the LOC, remained hot. Pakistan violated the ceasefire in multiple sectors, in Uri, Kupwara, Tangdar, Karna in Jammu and Kashmir, and Indian troops returned fire to safeguard civilian areas. Now, all of this comes after the India launched Operation Sindoor, a military campaign against Pakistan and its terror machinery. It was India's response to the bloodbath in Pahalgam that claimed the lives of 26 innocent people on the 22nd of April. Now, with missiles and drones back in play, Pakistan has provoked India again. But India's resolve to defend its people continues to foil Islamabad's misadventures. As tensions flare between India and Pakistan after overnight cross-border strikes, the United States is taking a cautious approach. US Vice President J.D. Vance says that Washington will not get involved directly, although it continues to encourage both sides to de-escalate. In an interview, Vance said that the ongoing conflict between New Delhi and Islamabad was none of America's business.
What we can do is try to encourage these folks to de-escalate a little bit, but we are not going to get involved in the middle of war. That's fundamentally none of our business.
Vance, whose family was on an official visit to India when the Pahalgam attack occurred on the 22nd of April, acknowledged the gravity of the situation, but framed it as a regional dispute beyond Washington's control. He added that while Washington is watching the conflict with concern, it does not intend to dictate terms to either side.
America can't tell the Indians to lay down their arms. We can't tell the Pakistanis to lay down their arms. And so we're going to continue to pursue this thing through diplomatic channels.
His comments are in line with President Donald Trump's America First foreign policy of calling for a retreat from the U.S. role as a mediator in foreign conflicts. Trump and Vance have repeatedly said the U.S. will walk away from brokering a ceasefire in other wars, like Ukraine, if direct talks aren't possible. But on the 7th of May, President Trump offered support, saying that he hopes the India-Pakistan conflict ends quickly and that he's willing to help if asked. Listen in.
They've gone tit for tat, so hopefully they can stop now. But I know both. We get along with both countries very well, good relationships with both, and I want to see it stop. And if I can do anything to help, I will be there.
Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio also spoke on Thursday with India's External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar after reaffirming Washington's commitment to work with India in the fight against terrorism. Rubio expressed support for direct dialogue between India and Pakistan. He further encouraged efforts to improve communications. Appreciating Washington's support, Minister S. Jaishankar said in a social media post that during his call with Rubio, he underlined India's targeted and measured response to the cross-border terrorism. He added that India will firmly counter any escalation. Since Operation Sindoor, India has launched a diplomatic blitz, contacting all 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council, along with the key partners like Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Japan, the European Union, and Italy. And it's not just governments. Several Indian origin politicians around the world are also speaking up. Former US presidential candidate Nikki Haley hit out at Pakistan, saying it can't play the victim and that no country gets a free pass for supporting terror. US Congressman Ro Khanna went a step further, calling Pakistan's army chief Asim Munir a dictator in an interview on the 7th of May and warning Islamabad against any retaliation. So with global support building and Pakistan under fire for harboring terror groups, India's message is loud and clear. Terror will be met with force and India will not back down. And for more on this, we have with us Helet Barel, the former director of Israeli National Security Council. He is joining us live from Tel Aviv. Welcome to the broadcast.
Hi, how are you?
Thanks for being with us. Now, from a security and a strategic standpoint, how do you assess the use of drones by Pakistan to test India's border defenses?
Well, we've seen the use of drones, but I think the most important thing that we saw is actually the Indian response, the ability to defend, which is in what professional circles we would call deterrence by denial. So whatever it is that Pakistan is trying to achieve, obviously was not, because if there are successful interceptions of an entire swarm of drones, then obviously India has demonstrated its ability to very successfully deal with that kind of threat. Having said that, I will say it's not trivial.
Right.
It's not easy to do. It is a big achievement. It requires a lot of technological work and redundancy and commitment. And it's not to say that it's always going to be 100%, but it's definitely a successful achievement. And so, what Pakistan will take away from that, you would hope, is that it's not going to be particularly useful tool other than in straining the Indian Defense Forces.
And given Israel's extensive experience in countering drone incursions, what technologies or border defense strategies would you recommend for a country like India facing persistent aerial threats across multiple border states?
Right. So what we have seen as successful is really a layered approach at defending against various aerial attacks, not just drones, but also various types of ballistic missiles, rockets, and so on. So what I mean by that is, you have your air defense systems that are using surface-to-air missiles and intercepting and successfully, and that's great. But you also have an air force that can do it in different ways and tactics in addition. And so what I mean by that is redundancy. It's good to have obviously more than one system, more than one type of defense in place. Obviously, detection is key here, which I think worked very well. And all of those things really show the level of sophistication that is required in defending versus the lack of sophistication really that's required for launching a lot of these aerial attacks. So it's an ongoing effort. It requires a lot of stamina. It requires several systems operating at once. It can be expensive. It can be difficult to carry out, but it is imperative, especially when we're talking about firing across border between, two nuclear countries. So that's in particular important that these things are being dealt with and the denial of achievement is put in place.
Right. And Hillet, how do such low intensity, unmanned aerial threats influence the broader regional stability and military postures between countries with historically tense relations like India and Pakistan?
Well, I think we call them low intensity, but they can become intense very quickly because the smallest miscalculation or the smallest mistake or something that is deemed as a success very quickly can turn into an escalatory act. Now, for example, Israel was just hit few days ago by the Israeli airport was hit by a missile from Yemen, a ballistic missile from Yemen that wasn't intercepted. And as a result, Yemen suffered a strategic attack on its airport that's been taken completely out of commission. These are two countries that are very far apart with very different kind of capabilities or whatever. In India and Pakistan, you can never know when a tactical attack that is meant to be low intensity will go awry and will cause the kind of damage that will require a strategic level response or at least consideration of a strategic level. So we're walking on a very kind of narrow line. And when India is able to put forth effective missile and aerial defenses, it's definitely a key to keeping the flames in check, keeping, control over where the conflict goes. Because when these things go awry, they do not remain low intensity. And we're talking about two countries, India and Pakistan. Obviously, there's a border. This is more similar to Israel and Lebanon. where it was really not ever low intensity. So it's a very, very thin line we're walking here. Low intensity and strategic events.
Right. Right. Thank you very much for being with us on First Post. Very much appreciated.
Thank you.
Amid rising tensions between India and Pakistan, airports, schools and colleges have been shut across several Indian states. The Civil Aviation Ministry has announced the suspension of civilian operations at 24 airports as a precautionary measure under Operation Sindoor. The airports closed in northern India include Jammu, Leh and Srinagar. Airports have also halted operations in Buntar, Shimla and Kangragargal. In the state of Punjab, civil aviation operations have been halted in Amritsar, Chandigarh, Ludhiana, Bathinda, Patiala, Halwara and Pathankot. Then in the Indian state of Rajasthan, the airports in Jaisalmer, Jodhpur, Kishangarh and in Bikaner have been shut. And in the western coast of India, several airports in the state of Gujarat, including Jamnagar, Hirasar, Porbandar, Keshad, Mundra, Kandla and Bhuj have suspended their operations. Further, the Bureau of Civil Aviation Security has also intensified airport security. Entry of visitors into terminals is banned. The sale of visitor entry tickets has been halted. Secondary ladder point checking is now compulsory for all flights, meaning that passengers and their hand baggage will be screened again just before boarding. Airports have also been ordered to ensure 100% CCTV functionality. And finally, in-flight security officers may now be deployed based on risk assessment. Due to the escalating situation, several airlines have issued travel advisories for their passengers. Domestic airlines like Air India and Akasa Air have advised passengers to arrive at the airports at least 3 hours before the scheduled departure time. Now, not just airports, but several education institutions across many states have also been closed. All schools, colleges and universities in Jammu and Kashmir will remain shut today and tomorrow. Then Panchkula in Haryana has also closed all schools and colleges. In Rajasthan, schools in Sri Ganganagar, Jodhpur, Bikaner, Jaisalmer and Barmer districts are shut, with the district of Una in Himachal Pradesh has also ordered the closure of all educational institutions.
वहाँ से निकले तो एकदम से लाइट बंद हो गई, ब्लैकआउट हो गया सारा। तो उसके बाद ड्रोन वगैरह चढ़ना स्टार्ट हो गए, हमला वगैरह स्टार्ट हो गया, पूरी रात फायरिंग वगैरह चलती रही। जो डिफेंस है वो अच्छे से मुंहतोड़ जवाब दे रही है, तो हमें मोदी जी पे भी विश्वास है और अपनी डिफेंस पे भी विश्वास है।
Leave cancellations have been enforced for the government, police and medical personnel across various states. The Jammu and Kashmir administration has suspended all leave for its officials. Administrative secretaries and heads of departments have been directed not to sanction any leave, except under exceptional circumstances. Now, Rajasthan has withdrawn leave approvals for all administrative and police staff near the international border. In fact, leave of doctors, nurses and paramedics in the state have also been cancelled. The Delhi government has also banned all leave for its officials, and while Punjab had already cancelled leave of police personnel, now the state has extended the order to health staff. As tensions with Pakistan escalate, authorities across various Indian states are on high alert and ready for any eventuality. And finally, let's take a look at the stock markets, which held steady on the day of Operation Sindoor, but have since come under pressure as geopolitical tensions weigh on investor sentiment. India's benchmark indices, the Sensex and the Nifty 50, closed lower today. The BSE Sensex was down by 880.34 points, or 1.10%. Ending at 79,454.70, while the Nifty 50 fell by 265.8 points, or 1.10%. This to settle at 24,008. Now, most sectoral indices, including the financial services, healthcare, power and IT sectors, traded lower during the day. Volatility also surged, with the India VIX, often referred to as the market's fear gauge, hitting over 1 month high in its 8th straight session of gains. Now, this is in stark contrast to the numbers on the 7th of May, when India's benchmark indices closed slightly higher. The Sensex closed at 0.13% up, while the Nifty 50 closed by up to 0.14%. So what's driving today's sell-off? First, of course, is the rising tensions between India and Pakistan. Experts say that the market has turned highly volatile after India's drone strikes, and there are growing fears of a wider conflict. Second, no concrete outcome yet from the ongoing India-US trade talks. And third, the rise in US dollar rates. The dollar is on track for a weekly gain against most major currencies, as a US-UK trade agreement raises hopes for progress in the upcoming US-China talks. Yet not everything was in the red. India's defense and drone stocks soared through the day, driven by expectations of higher order flows amid rising tensions. Experts believe that this sector could see sustained momentum in the near term. Meanwhile, across the border, Pakistan's stock market saw a partial recovery today. After 4 days of losses, the index surged up to 2% in early trade before settling lower. Just yesterday, the Karachi Stock Exchange 100 index dropped by over 6% in a single session. Still, analysts say that Indian markets are unlikely to see major outflows thanks to hopes of a trade deal and the strength of the country's economy. Historical data from the past 2 decades also shows India's markets typically rebound quickly from geopolitical shocks, with little lasting impact in the long run. So while today's sell-off reflects short-term fears, history shows India's markets don't stay down for long. And that's all we have on the show for today. We will see you again tomorrow at the same time. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned to First Post.